It seems strange to me, and maybe it's because I'm an army grunt, not a sailor, to see so many sailors just go overboard and go missing. Especially in this particular case, I'm pretty sure this one was an officer, and out of a crew of 300 or so, roughly, aboard a Tycho class cruiser, it would seem like they would be missed almost immediately. And is there not a watch that could see someone go overboard? It just seems very strange. We had this happen aboard the Statham. We had it aboard the Normandy. We had it aboard the Shiloh last year. And now it's the Lake Erie and the Essex, where with all of the assets available to the Navy, they could not even recover a body. It just doesn't seem like that should be possible with accountability formations and basically floating forward operating bases. When we have forward operating bases, at least from an Army perspective, you just can't go amble outside the wire without somebody knowing literally immediately, which is, I suppose, would be the case here, the Army equivalent of what we're seeing here in the Navy, of just people walking off. Now, as if that weren't strange enough, about a week or so ago, when I was looking around in Brazil, and a lot of you I'm sure remember the video, I found this strange marker out there that said Polo Norte, and it said North Pole, and so I decided, well, let's just see what's on the other side of the globe, and found one of those tools you can use online, and if you drew a line directly through the center of the Earth from that point, you come out at the Spratlys. Now, of course, everyone knows that the Spratlys have been in the news because China has been, quote-unquote, militarizing them. We've also seen in this area, this is, of course, over here to the left, this is Malaysia. This is where the airliners disappeared. So, was just nosing around over here. And aboard the Essex, real quick, this is the area they said the sailor went missing. So it was within sight of a lot of land, and there's a lot of traffic here. It wasn't like it was way out here in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific. They were searching in these tiny little areas and crevices and seas, and I know it's still a lot of area to cover, but there's still a lot of assets. And like I said, these are Navy carriers and destroyers. It should not be this easy to just have somebody decide, I'm leaving, or for somebody to something else to go on. That's all I'm going to say about that. But for all the things that you can see out here and that satellites pick up and they distort and make look strange, to see something that you can't identify is fairly common. But to see something you can and realize you found something that most people don't know is there is pretty satisfying. And I think in this particular video, in this case, I have found something. Now, all of these little reefs and whatever you want to call them out here that China has created or accentuated, there's a million different things out here you can see. And you'll see islands with buildings and lighthouses and boats and ships and docks and nothing out of the ordinary. But check this out. If you zoom in on this one, and you keep going, I had to mark it out because it was almost impossible to find. Out here, no land forever. And I'll move this triangle out of the way to make it a little bit easier to see. There is just a helipad throwing a shadow like it's hovering or it's been anchored to the seafloor. Nothing around it, just a helipad. Odd as hell. And I'll zoom out. I put this triangle here just so I could find it again as a marker because it's so tiny. Now I'll explain what that line is here in a minute. I'm just zooming out to give you a better look at where this is. This is literally right where that pointer came out for Polo Norte in Brazil. Now I thought, what in the world? Why would they have just this random helipad be out here in the middle of nowhere? And if you look closely, you can see it. There's an H right there in the middle. And of course, you see the shadow here. And you see something else here too. These, I don't know what else is throwing this shadow up here, but it's something clearly that's clandestine. But the line, let's get to that. So I'm like, well, we'll mark that and see what else we can find. Check this out. Now ignore this center dot. I don't even know why it's there. It's not marking anything. I was zooming in here on one of these islands, and what I was trying to do is just to get a control to say, okay, this is what this is. This is normal, so that when we show you something that isn't normal, it'll stick out like a sore thumb. So we have this, what looks like, you think for a minute, is another Chinese base, but it's not. Yep, that's right. Written in English, no less. Imagine that. Now, also strangely enough, what really stuck out here is that there's swimming pools. So this is some random resort. That's not the funny part. Here's the funny part. Down here on this end of the island, you see these random circular growths. And you're like, what are they growing out here? And then it dawned on me when I saw back up here some purple light. That's not it. Let me see if I can find it. You can see growing lights. It's kind of hard to get it to show up here. Let's see if I can make it show up a little better. There it is. Right here, do you see this violet? This whole top is super reflective, but underneath it you can see the reflection of the purple growing lights. They are growing massive amounts of weed out here at this little resort. So now, as if these two things weren't bad enough, so we have two reference points, right? I'll pull this out. So if those are our two reference points, random helipad out in the middle of nowhere here, and then clearly what looks like a drug operation here, what happens when we continue that line in either direction? Well, guess what? Now, we've seen boats, and I know we've seen all sorts of other strangeness. But look what just so happens to be in a straight line. Now, I know what everybody's going to say. It's at altitude, and it's just an artifact. So explain to me why that artifact is throwing a wake in the water. Can someone explain that? If this is really at altitude, why do we see a wake in the water behind the plane? Now, up to the north here, there is an airport, but that would have been one hell of a right-hand turn from this airport. It's kind of hard to see, but here's the airport here. If it took off, it would have had to bank literally 90 degrees almost immediately. And it just so happens to be in a perfect straight line with that weird helipad out in the middle of nowhere. This is off the coast of Vietnam. And you can draw it right to it. A drug operation, a random helipad, and supposedly an airliner at altitude but throwing a wake in the water. You can't make this stuff up. So I've zoomed out on the map far enough. I think you guys can find it for yourself. It's pretty easy, this little island here off of Vietnam out here. If you just find that island, the first thing you'll come to is this blacked out area. And if you look close enough, the green really sticks out like a sore thumb. For your helipad. Helipad with nothing around it. And then a straight line shot between the two to 420 Paradise. This clearly is not quote-unquote militarized. Unless it's a completely different military than I served in. It looks like it has 2 swimming pools. It's got one here. And well, maybe it's just 1 swimming pool. But it's definitely a resort. So we'll leave it there. Let you guys figure this out on your own. Like, share, subscribe.